Hello, everybody. Welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp, joined by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello, hello.
This is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other stuff.
And, so since we last brought you an episode, there was an insurrection at the Capitol led by a man in bison horns, I believe. And, and some others with some face paint and some pretty flags. And a woman carrying a "Don't Tread on Me" flag was trampled to death. So that's all gone down. We have covered this on other shows, other things we do. So if you want kind of more of the play-by-play, I've done Moment of Clarity episodes on it, Government Secrets, the podcast episode mostly on it. So we're gonna not spend the full hour on this thing because I think it's
far less than the full hour.
It's been covered to death. Yeah, no, that's my point.
I think we need to move on, y'all.
Seriously. We'll spend a few minutes on it, but there's plenty more if you need. If that's what you need, I've done plenty of more coverage of it. So, but a couple of notes though before we move on is what's going on now is it's amazing to see on Twitter, on mainstream media, you're seeing people like Colin Powell and Bill Kristol and George W. Bush basically coming forward and saying there needs to be accountability for what happened. These are people who planned and perpetrated and lied to create the war in Iraq that has killed 1 million people. And they are saying there needs to be accountability for what happened at the Capitol. Thoughts?
I'm just I'm gonna let you handle most of this update about the insurrection because I have my own thoughts and I'm gonna save them to the end.
To the end of this topic or the end of the episode?
The end of the topic.
Okay. Anyway, seeing those people who are such disgusting war criminals, they're sociopaths. The number of people they've killed is unfathomable, and yet you now see the media along with our politicians, of course, rehabilitating their image. I mean, the rehabilitation of Bush has been going on for years now, right? With photos of Obama hugging him, and Joe Biden gave him the Medal of Freedom, like in a big ceremony, put it around, or not Medal of Freedom, but whatever it was, Medal of Liberty or something, put it around his neck, and with the crowd cheering, and that's who these people are. And to watch them right now be like, we need accountability for this. And something that I did a moment of clarity on yesterday, which fits into this topic, is that compared to the amount of violence at the Capitol, which I believe is horrible, I believe that people should be punished, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying, oh, it was nothing, oh, it's fine. But compare this coverage that we've seen in our media and by our politicians with the coverage of the amount of violence that is done in so many other ways in our society, whether it's denying people health care, whether it's our police brutality violence, the 1,000 killed each year by killer cops, whether it's simple poverty that is killing and harming people, whether it's us dropping a bomb every 12 minutes. None of that apparently requires accountability. None of that really gets this type of quick and immediate reaction with, we need an impeachment right away. They're rushing this impeachment through. They couldn't rush through a vote on Medicare for all, but they're rushing this second impeachment vote through. And to me, it's just laughable that this is the only kind of violence that actually matters to these people. And it's because the violence was turned towards the lawmakers. I don't support that, but that is why this matters to them far more than when they're bombing innocent civilians. Literally, it's a bomb every 12 minutes. That is not something that needs quick and immediate attention. So, to me, that's one of the most important points of what's going on right now. And then the last thing I'll say about this which we have covered a little bit. Eleanor and I were on a live stream we did Sunday, which you can also watch, youtube.com/momentofclarity, where we talk some about this. But this is being used by the big tech companies to do an immense and immediate kind of purge, censorship of so many people. It's not, people are focusing on the fact that Trump's Twitter account was banned. And my feeling is I am against unilateral censorship by these platforms, but I am for them censoring anyone who's killed over, I've decided, 10,000 people. Under 10, if it's like a few hundred, we let it slide. But over 10,000, if you've killed 10,000 people or more, then you're not allowed to have a Twitter account. And so that would go for Obama, Hillary, all of them. But of course, that's not how these tech platforms do their censorship. They just decide what's basically good for them, good for the most of the ruling elite. And right now, getting rid of Trump is good for most of the ruling elite. And so they're banning that. They've also apparently banned 70,000 people who believe the QAnon conspiracy shit. They've also, Facebook has banned Ron Paul, former lawmaker, libertarian. And you've got to assume that we're about inches away from them banning my page, banning Redacted Tonight. I mean, I don't see any difference in them choosing to purge 70,000 people and them purging Redacted Tonight. So,
yeah, no, worrisome. And this is kind of, and sorry, y'all, I'm in a mood, but this is part of the reason, because there's a lot, like way too much fucking chatter about what the fuck happened on the 6th. Like people saying that January 6th will live in infamy. It shouldn't. You know what should live in infamy? The day that Tamir Rice was murdered by cops. The day that the recent, I believe it was January 11th, was the 19th anniversary of the first Muslim prisoners arriving at Guantanamo Bay. Did anybody fucking talk about that? And this is, and I know that Lee, you already talked about this, and so I'm not going to get into like the, that side of things, but also as somebody who does community organizing, y'all, who fucking cares? And I do it in DC. Who fucking cares about the Capitol building? Who fucking cares about the White House? Like, there are people right now that are homeless, hungry, freezing in the district. And of course outside, but I'm talking specifically about DC right now. And folks are wringing their fucking hands about the fucking Capitol, filled with predominantly dickbags who couldn't give a shit whether people are freezing to death outside. So I have not shed one fucking tear for what happened at the Capitol. And this is not to say that I'm on the side of Trump. It's like, let's get some fucking, like, let's move away from the stupid binary and add some nuance. I hate fascists. I deeply believe in punching Nazis. But this is not the issue here. The issue here is that we are focusing on this, which in comparison is a teeny tiny bit of violence. And not focusing on the violence of the state, the violence that is perpetuated by the state and ignored by the state. And we are using it as an as an excuse to let through, the digital restrictions that Lee just mentioned, also the domestic terrorism issue that I'm going to talk about in a second. But it's like, we need to move on, and we need to move on to the coming days. There has been a lot of planning online, including places like Parler that are now offline, that have moved to other places like Gab or whatever the other, places that these, asshats congregate. There's been a lot of chatter about coming back to DC on the 16th and 17th and the 20th and surrounding, the White House and the Capitol. And it's like, that is very problematic. But you know what else is problematic is that these people are staying at hotels in the district. They have, in the past, like recently, stabbed people in the streets just because they look, queer, or they look black or like people of color or what have you, or they look left or whatever the fuck. These people are violent towards the communities that they are in. And that is the problem. The longer that we continue to be the pearl clutchers for the elite, the longer we will find ourselves oppressed and living under this shit show of capitalism and extreme white supremacy and patriarchy, because we're not looking at the real threat. And that brings me to the next point, which is this, Biden saying we need new domestic terrorism legislation. No, we don't. And there's a great article in The Nation, actually, about this issue. And while there is no generic federal law punishing specifically domestic terrorism, there is a lot there's a lot of there's a lot of leeway for prosecutors to use the broad terrorism laws, which they are fucking broad, to prosecute acts of domestic terrorism. And surprise, surprise, these have been committed by right-wing extremists. The problem is that prosecutors don't. So it's not that prosecutors don't have the tools, it's that they don't use them. And this was something that the Brennan Center's Mike German pointed out recently. He wrote, "The Justice Department's inattention to far-right violence is a matter of longstanding policy and practice, not a lack of authority. As a result, the term domestic terrorism has been rendered practically inconsequential." So it's not that we can't, oh my God, did we never think to have domestic terrorism legislation? Yeah, no, we did. We totally did. We just don't fucking use it because, again, the people who are perpetrating that violence are right-wing extremists, which the U.S. government doesn't have a problem with because they are right-wing extremists too.
Well, we don't even use the term terrorism usually when it's done by white right-wing extremists. Only a few media outlets after Charlottesville called it a terrorist attack. I mean, the guy fucking drove a car through a group of people in order to kill as many as possible. How is that, to put forward political ideals? How is that not a terrorist act, terror attack? And it's really only used when it's a person of color.
Right. And also the problem with using the term domestic terrorism is that the domestic terrorism, battle axe has already been swung at predominantly Muslim communities after 9/11, right? There are Muslim Americans that have found themselves all of a sudden like on the no-fly list for no fucking reason. There's no evidence to suggest that they're part of some, extreme foreign terrorist group or whatever the fuck, which, by the way, the U.S. just blanket calls people terrorists for no reason. Like the entire Iranian army is a terrorist organization just because the U.S. government doesn't like Iran. So these labels get slapped on a variety of people for no fucking reason. And so as Center for Constitutional Rights attorney Diala Shamas pointed out, that this is a trap. What she writes, "What work does the terrorism word do? It just stokes fear and clouds our ability to talk about root causes, understand different forms of violence and protest, and different relationships with the state." So again, this domestic terrorism legislation is not going to be used against right-wing extremists because guess what? We haven't used it so far, and we've had the ability to. The KKK marching through the streets, and, after Charlottesville, was there a call for domestic terrorism legislation? I mean, there is already shit that can be used for that.
Most mass shootings.
Exactly. There and to be fair, there have been a few instances. I think I remember reading about some things that happened like in 2016 where people were tried for domestic terrorism. So you can already be tried. Again, it already is possible, but the U.S. prosecutors don't use it. So this domestic terrorism legislation is likely going to be used for, anti-fascist self-defense. And it's going to be used for shit like critical infrastructure, people going onto pipeline easements, for instance, in order to protect land and water. That's where it's going to be pointed because that's already where it has been pointed. So this idea that domestic terrorism, yes, I know it would feel good for everyone to see someone like, the guy that shot several people in Minneapolis this past, or was it Milwaukee? This past summer to be
Minneapolis, I think,
to be labeled a domestic terrorist. Yeah, that would feel good. But this is also the problem with, which was what we also talked about on our live stream. Just because something feels good in the immediacy, like, oh yeah, Trump is off Twitter, woo!
Sorry, Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Oh, Kenosha. I knew it was something with a W or a Wisconsin, Milwaukee. They're all it gets
or
troubled.
A woman named OSHA.
So it can feel good to say, oh yeah, now that asshole's a domestic terrorist. But understanding, again, looking at like how the system works, we have to take a step back. Take a step back from last week. Take a step back from the immediacy of the current time, and look at the history. Look at the rap sheet of the United States government with this, and see what they're likely to do with these tools. And then you will, I hope, then you will quickly stop cheering for these kind of legislative moves. And I think that it's important that we do that. And again, that we focus on the shit that is important, y'all. Like, we need to organize in our communities. We do not need to help protect it. You know, it's like the song "God Save the Queen." She's fine. She's gonna be fine. She's in Buckingham Palace. She's gonna be just fine. We don't need to save the Queen. We do not need to save Congress. We need to save each other. We need to protect each other. And that, you know, I could go on, but I'm gonna let that rest. Eleanor rests.
Eleanor rests her case. I would have been fine with you going on. I thought it was going great. Well, our next story is something that can fill people's hearts with love and joy and really make them feel good about this year. And I'm not. That's not sarcasm. I'm being absolutely genuine, or at least, you know, about how this year is looking up, and how the positive things are on the horizon. Sheldon Adelson is dead, which is very, very exciting.
Pray tell, Lee, could you let folks know who aren't familiar with this particular brand of human virus who Sheldon Adelson was?
Well, for one thing, you would not have, for those who are really focused on the Trump presidency, you would not have a Trump presidency without Sheldon Adelson, almost definitely. He spent hundreds of millions to get Trump into that office.
Also, is it Adelson or Adelson? I keep saying Adelson.
I feel like I've heard more people say Adelson, but...
Okay. I'm going to keep saying Adelson.
How about we keep doing both so that no one can say we got it wrong?
Or let's just say I hope that I'm wrong just so it irritates someone.
Or I'm going to start saying Sheldon Adelson, because then people would be like, you have it so wrong, I don't know where to start. How about that? But so spent millions upon millions of dollars to support Trump, get Trump into office. This is a billionaire who was a billionaire who created, or at least oversaw, maybe created the Sands casinos. And his genius, by the way, why the Sands was so successful, and it may have been other things, but I know part of it was that he figured out, you know, there's these like casino areas like Vegas where everyone goes, and there is one in Vegas, but I think his real genius was to try and put them in really poor areas of America that were really struggling. Because he knew that people would run to a casino when their lives are collapsing, because they think, I'm going to be rich any minute. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, he put them in places like small towns in Pennsylvania and shit like that I remember driving by them. And I get that not every area of the country will allow a casino, but he would find the poor areas that would allow a casino, or he would force through legislation to allow them. And then he'd put in his casino, and these poor people would go and spend whatever remaining $3 they had and make him richer and richer and richer. It was a genius move. And so, build a billionaire who, hardcore Zionist, like Israel should just obliterate everyone else. He wrote a op-ed or something in 2013 saying we should nuclear bomb Iran. No mind that would kill millions upon millions of innocent civilians, men, women, and children, babies. Didn't matter to him. Sounds good to him. And so he is, in a lot of ways, he is kind of, they called him a kingmaker for a while, because basically whoever he would put his hundreds of millions behind would win the Republican primaries or whatever. And so they would all go and kiss the Adelson ring and make sure and have him on their side. And at first he didn't like Trump, but then he changed his tune once Trump got the nomination. And he seems to be the big push behind, like, Jared Kushner's hilarious, quote-unquote, Israel-Palestine peace agreement, which really was a Israel-Israel peace agreement.
Israel agrees to be at peace with Israel.
Because there was no consultation with Palestine, and it just completely fucked over Palestine. And he was one of the big pushes behind the terrible move of declaring Jerusalem the capital of for America to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and move our embassy there, which is just another giant fuck you to the Arab world and Palestinians and yeah, so too bad. Too bad we lost him.
We all shed a tear. And I just want to, just another little nugget that this is, there's this Twitter user that I follow called @Existential Comics, and they're wonderful. And so there's been a lot of chatter about 1984. Oh my God, this is so Orwellian. What's happening? Their responses. Since everyone likes quoting George Orwell right now, here's my favorite quote of his on why he joined the Spanish Civil War. Quote, "When I joined the militia, I had promised myself to kill one fascist. After all, if each of us killed one, they would soon be extinct." So there's your quote of the day, folks. Spread the joy.
George Orwell.
George Orwell.
All right, some quick notes before we continue on our merry way. I didn't mean we're ending. I meant continue on our merry episode.
Yeah, we don't have a merry way to continue on. It's just the episode, really.
Couple of quick notes. I think we're doing another live stream this Sunday. Are we doing another live stream?
You always ask me while we're like on the air, which means that if I say no, I'm a dick. If I,
just say likely.
But,
all right, less likely now.
No, because so here's the thing. This coming Saturday and Sunday, there's some shit planned to go down, and I might be on call as, a white person to go out and be witness to some shit going down. Right, so I don't know.
I'll leave it at this.
See, this is the conversation that was going to happen offline, but now it's happening online, so now everyone gets to hear this conversation.
People enjoy our sitcom banter. I check my Twitter on Sunday evening to see. I will tweet out a couple of hours in advance whether we're doing the live stream or not. And but we did one this week. If you'd like to watch it, you can watch it at youtube.com/momentofclarity. Please click subscribe and hit the bell icon before they delete the channel, which who knows when that'll be. Eleanor's movie is at hardroadofhope.com. It's won many awards, and you should definitely check out that documentary, hardroadofhope.com. Patreon.com/commoncensored is what keeps this show going. We have as you've probably noticed, we have no ads. We have no network sponsoring us. There is nobody funding this show except for small-time donors, a couple dollars here and there, and it's at patreon.com/commoncensored. You also can get extra content there as well. And I'll just finish up with all of Eleanor's work can be found at artkillingapathy.com. She's got a recent article there for you to check out, recent column. And yeah, artkillingapathy.com. All right, let's keep it moving. Sound good?
Indeed.
So I know this is depressing, but I feel like we have to keep talking about it because what the fuck other choice do we have? 2020 we now know for sure, because it takes a while to crunch all the numbers, was one of the 2 hottest years ever recorded. And the other one, for those people going, see, climate change always been a thing because there was another hottest year. Yeah, the other hottest year was 2016. So all of these hottest years seem to be within the past 10 years. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, hottest year ever recorded, and I think most people are seeing it around them. We're seeing the changes in the environment. And really, we need to be, and I know I've said this before, many people have said this, but it's one of these things you just got to keep repeating. We need a fucking Manhattan Project. Mm-hmm. It should be all hands on deck. It should be like the changing
of... It's a war economy.
It should be like the changing of our economy for World War II. Everything changed in a matter of months. You had, obviously, that was a time when it was mostly men, more men in the workplace and women at home. And that switched to men going off to war and women going to the workplace in many ways. And, just this mass shift was made. Corporations that were all about profit had to switch and start making, planes and bombers and things like that. And, that wasn't, they were told to do that by the government. They weren't making a profit much from it. This was before the time of massive defense contracts. So it was really just, hey, guess what? You're an American company. You're going to help us survive. Deal with it. Mm-hmm. And that was how, and they assumed they'd get, the perks of working with the government on the back end, but still, the entire economy shifted, and we could be doing that now because this is actually a larger existential threat than fucking world wars in many ways. And yet we're not. And yet it gets, there's a little coverage here and there. Thank God the mainstream media has begun covering it, but they do it, it'll be one report every 3 days about how climate change is real. And it's like, no, this should be fucking, most of our lives should be centered around ways we can help deal with this. Ways to get the top minds in the country and the world working together on this. As we saw with the vaccines, some countries work together, but many countries are fucking, we'll create a vaccine for us, especially America. Vaccine for us, and we'll try and keep it from other countries. It's like, climate change is going to hit us all. Why don't we work together on fucking solving this thing?
Yeah, and I recently saw a picture. It was pretty great. It was a picture of a bunch of Cuban doctors walking through, it looked like, an airport. And they were holding a Cuban flag, and they had their masks on, and everything, and they were going to save lives. And actually, Italy this past summer, I believe, projected a giant grazie to Cuba for their work. They sent doctors to Italy. I'll repeat that: Cuba sent doctors to Italy. Okay. And then underneath that picture was a picture of a bunch of U.S. soldiers holding an American flag. And it was like, spot the difference. Like, Cuba's like, we're going to go save lives. And America's like, I heard someone has oil. Let's kill some people. And of course, I'm not saying that there aren't American doctors that are, doing amazing work. That's not my point. The point is the state focus, right? The focus of the government at large. And, Cuba has offered to help the U.S. on many occasions, perhaps very notably in, after Hurricane Katrina, because Louisiana is like legit. If you look at a map, it's like right. You could almost like throw something at Cuba and like hit it from Louisiana. So after Katrina, Cuba was like, hey, you want some help rescuing people? And the U.S. was like, no, we got it. And of course, we don't got it. At all.
We got it.
So anyway, it's just an interesting perspective on working together. And I think, to your point, Lee, like the only way we're already experiencing climate change. There's nothing we can do about it. The only way to mitigate the oncoming onslaught of extreme climate change is to work together, and that collaboration, that mutualism that is the antithesis of capitalism. So, the system has to basically, in effect, fall. And this is I'm not going to get into this is something that I'm going to get into the nerdery about on an upcoming Act Out episode, but this feeling that like a lot of us want capitalism to fail. A lot of us want the empire to fall. But of course, part of that is also like watching shit go down that feels very scary, that we have a hard time processing, and we also don't want things to fall and then crush, the communities that we care about under them. So how do we deal with that juxtaposition, and how can we still uphold our desire for the empire and for capitalism to fall and to fail, while also understanding that we want to try and to the best of our ability to keep each other safe. And yeah, that's a tricky one. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you I don't have the answer. This is just something that I've been ruminating on. Yeah, thank you. Chewing on in my brain.
Brain chewing. It's the best.
Brain chewing. Yes. Anywho.
Well, we have a related topic next. if you'd like to take it away.
Yes. So this is terrifying, speaking of 1984, and came on the heels of Julian Assange not being granted bail, even though the judge denied the U.S. extradition request.
Denied it because the judge said Julian Assange would very well kill himself if he were sent to America. But other than that, she agreed with everything the prosecution, the U.S. government prosecution, had put forward, which is kind of horrifying.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely horrifying. And if you want to take a look at, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there about what happened in court, but Assange's defense team has a Twitter where they basically like outlined what the judge was saying as the judge was in court. So, but anyway, this story is also from the UK, and it came shortly thereafter on the 8th of January, where more than 1,000 people who took part in direct action organized by Extinction Rebellion have been taken to court in what folks are saying is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, crackdowns on protest in British legal history. Hundreds of cases are ongoing, and lawyers say that despite the pandemic, some defendants may still be asked to travel to court in London from across the UK. Now, for those who are unaware, UK is like the epicenter of this new strain that's like, you know, that seems to be a lot more aggressive and a lot more what's the word? Contagious.
Contagious, yeah. They say 70% more contagious.
Right. And when they were waiting outside of Old Bailey for, you know, the decision with regards to Assange to come through, By the way,
because of that, I've just decided I'm going to stop making out with strangers.
It's not worth it.
People on the sidewalk. Yeah, I feel like we're going to have it's going to be only if I have a 3-minute meet and greet.
I am still letting dogs lick my face, though. So, you know, and horses and cats, but not that many horses around DC.
Do they just have a need to run up and do this, or are you thrusting your face into theirs?
I am rubbing bacon grease on my face, and then I'm walking up to the dogs, yes. So during the as folks were waiting for the decision, the Assange decision outside the Old Bailey, there were no protests allowed because London was on lockdown, and the only reason that you could go out was to get food or to exercise, or, you know, which is funny to me because I can go for a jog, I just can't protest authoritarianism. Okay, but. So London was on lockdown with new restrictions, but at the same time, they're like, yeah, but you who stood on a bridge at one point like a year ago to protest climate change, you're going to have to drag your ass, which may or may not have COVID, to London, which may or may not have COVID, the people who will be around you, and stand trial for giving a fuck about the planet. So that's cool.
That makes a lot of sense. Really does. And let's be honest, that Extinction Rebellion, and it doesn't really matter whether this action I didn't really think was useful or that one I didn't like. It's like, in general, Extinction Rebellion is really how we all should be behaving. We should all be interrupting business as usual to demand action on climate change because we're literally fighting for our own existence. And so they're the only sane ones out there. And yet, of course, as the system will do, they've been arrested many times, and now we're seeing over 1,000 activists are being taken to court in the UK because they want to shut this down. They don't want people getting in the way of business as usual in order to save humanity, because that's not profitable.
Yeah, and I mean, these are not, again, like to your point, like there are people who, you know, shut things down, but they basically, like, most of the offenses, quote unquote, are for what's called in the UK, minor public order offenses, such as obstructing the highway. So this is not like, oh my God, you murdered children. Right. That, like, it's for minor shit. And they're saying that they are going to have to potentially come to London to stand trial. And as one of the lawyers for XR pointed out, these are people from every age range. You know, there were older people over 65 who took part in these actions. There are also people who are considered, you know, essential workers. There were doctors involved. There were builders and teachers. So there's there's a lot of people that are involved with this that you don't want to either stop what they're doing. Like, hey, doctor, I know that person needs to be intubated, but we're going to need you to come to London to stand trial for blocking a bus. Like this it's so fucking insane. So,
and on a slightly separate note, part of what I love about Extinction Rebellion is they realize that the media is largely not going to cover standard protest, even though it's to save our own existence. And so they've used many creative forms of activism of protest that kind of demands that people share it and talk about it. They appeared, what was it, 6 or 7 of them appeared naked in the House of Commons, with like no extinction or whatever written on their chests or whatever. But 7, 8 naked people in the House of Commons, that gets people's attention. They Extinction Rebellion here in D.C. glued themselves to the tunnels where the legislators get between Senate and Congress and everything, and which caused people to, got in the way of the business day. People got furious and things like that because these people were super glued into their path. They've dumped, red paint on places to represent blood. But I like that they're doing it in a way that really, like, it grabs attention, it creates viral images, and I'm sure there's an argument to be made that that's not what's important. What's important is not these silly images. What's important is A, B, and C. And it's like, yeah, but unfortunately, we live in a time where the more shares you can get on a post, the more activity you can get from people, and that's just the reality of what it is. And so, if you can come up with creative ideas and creative visuals, it can make all the difference.
Yeah, and to another point, like there's an argument, and this was an argument that I heard a lot about when I was part of blocking a highway here in DC. People that I hadn't heard from in years, people that I went to like high school with were like messaging me like, "You're a fucking terrorist." I was like, "Cool, good to hear from you."
Yeah, I got some of those emails.
It's kind of like when I heard from a couple of family members from my dad's side when I did like this anti-Israel video. They're like, "You're a self-hating Jew," and I'm like, "Hey, I haven't heard from you since like my brother's bar mitzvah, but hey, cool."
Yeah, I got an email from a kid I was friendly with like back when I was like 12, and I haven't heard from him in like 20 years. And I was like, "Oh, I remember Daniel." And I like open it up, and he's like, "Man, what the fuck happened to you?" I was like, I read things.
Yeah, I don't know. I grew the fuck up.
I grew the fuck up. I learned, and I cared for the people we're obliterating around the world, and you're upset about me."
You're mad at your dad, not me. But I get it. People are pissed off. Well, I'm stuck in traffic, and now they're blocking the road, and yeah, no.
I have a nail appointment, okay? You can't just get another one. They're too crowded.
And I think, like, the argument that people would give to me is like, do you really think you're changing people's minds by blocking traffic? And here's the thing.
I got your attention.
Yeah. But I'm gonna poorly quote Scott Crow here, but he's like, "I'm not trying to convert you. Like, I'm not a member of the Church of Anarchy trying to I'm not gonna fuck it. Yeah, there's no gospel here that I'm trying. I don't want your support. I want you to pay the fuck attention. Like, that is the goal here. And yes, there's nuance there. Like, some people will say for, like, if Black Lives Matter, like, the point is to show you what it feels like to be stuck in a powerless situation. Like, hey, this is what that feels like, but now amplify that. And like, oh, you think you're pissed about getting stuck in traffic. How do you think you'll feel when your house gets eaten by a fucking mudslide thanks to climate change or whatever? It's like, the point is not to convert you. It's not so that you will sign on to be a member of my club. It's to fucking get your attention.
To wake you up, get your attention, yeah.
So, yes, I want you to be mad. Fucking get angry. And, like, also, when I blocked traffic, there was a guy who literally, like, assaulted us as we were standing there blocking traffic to try and get us to move we didn't, but and so like, yes, be angry, but then like when you have a second to calm down, you might just think to yourself, that is really fucked up. Also, what did that sign say? Like there might be, and for some people, you know, I'll quote Kilu Nash on this too. Some people are just gonna die wrong. It's not about trying to convert people or gain their support for my running for Congress. It's about getting people's attention. And I'm sorry, but if people would pay the fuck attention, if I just sat on the corner handing out leaflets, I would do that because that's more. It's more fun than blocking a highway, to be honest. But the attention is not being shifted. And again, like kind of looping back to what we talked about at the beginning, the attention to the shit that matters is not there. And so these actions, these tactics are being used because of that. And so if you don't like being stuck in traffic, if you don't like that your fucking street's been blocked off by protesters, then maybe ask yourself why this tactic is being employed in the first place. And for the most part, I'm guessing that people listening to this are not the kind of people that would go out and try to, you know, beat the shit out of protesters blocking their block. But, you know, share it with your friends. It's not about conversion. It's not about, you know, support. It's about people having to pay attention in that moment. And, yeah.
Well, and it's about, I think it's about waking up people who are receptive to the cause, to how important it is, because they're already halfway there. And the people who are most hardcore against it, yeah, they're not going to be converted, but that's okay. That's not the goal. Like the goal is far larger than that. Okay, so we're going to wrap up with one more story, a good news story about who's going to save us all.
It's not even it's not even really like a story. I saw this.
No, this is incredibly important.
I saw this and I was like, what the fuck is going? You know, what a few years ago, I can't remember if it was you, Lee, or somebody else that said, "Have you heard of the simulation theory? That we all just live in a simulation that was created by some kid in their parents' basement."
You and I have had several debates about this. That the idea, I think we actually,
it's basically God for tech nerds.
I get why you view it as God for tech nerds.
Is it not?
In a way, but we actually did. I think we in the early days of the podcast, I think like in the first few months, we did a whole segment discussing it. But anyway, it's the theory that computers will get good enough that they can create simulations for the quote-unquote beings inside that are so high level that the beings wouldn't know they're not real. And so the argument is that maybe we're in one of those. And anyway...
So
let's
there are certain moments where it feels like that might be true. And this headline really brought me close to that feeling. Why Dippin Dots might have a place in the COVID vaccine distribution plan. And then underneath it, my friend who did this put, it's a guy with his hand raised, and he's like, "Who had Dippin Dots saving the world in 2021?" And basically...
on their 2021 bingo.
Right.
Dippin Dots saving us all. It's going to happen. So I think you should explain what Dippin Dots are for some people, because I haven't seen them around in a while.
No, well... Yeah, that's true. But I generally avoid like the ice cream section of grocery stores nowadays.
Oh, they're not in grocery stores.
Oh, they're not? See, I wouldn't even know.
They can only be made. This is part of the story.
They can only be made.
Well, no, this is part of the story. They can only be made with this high-level freezing technique that flash freezes these dots of basically drips of ice cream. And so you get a bowl of these like beads, like BBs basically, of ice cream. And they sell them at stadiums and stuff. And I remember getting them.
They're really not at stores. Huh?
No, because if you were to put them in a box and put them in the freezer aisle of your store,
they just like
they would just congeal into a block, and then you'd be like, "What kind of Dippin' Dot is this?"
This is just one big dot.
This is
okay. So, well, you just explained what they are, but basically, the reason that they might have a role in saving the day is that the brand operates a line of ultra cold freezers that could keep the vaccine at the appropriate temperature, because the vaccine has to be at like negative 40 or something.
One of the two vaccines has to be ridiculously cold.
Yeah, like insanely cold, so that like a regular freezer can't handle it, which is why there are other companies like AstraZeneca that has been working on a vaccine that can be held at like just a regular freezer temperature and not like a Dippin Dots freezer temperature.
So basically, Dippin Dots has thousands of these insane freezers that they've been using to run around to stadiums to sell you a bizarre little ice cream that you think looks interesting but doesn't actually taste as good as regular ice cream. And
but it feels cool.
it's possible they could switch those over to be used for vaccines, and they could serve you bowls of colorful vaccine.
I mean, that sounds slightly dystopian, but but yeah, so I mean, that feels a little bit like we live in a simulation.
But is that any weirder than all the other shit that's going on? I mean, there was a guy in a bison helmet, shirtless, running Congress this week. Like,
no, hey, I'm not saying it's any weirder. I'm just saying that it's, yeah. I mean,
another guy killed himself by tasing himself in the balls. Like,
wasn't there something with Gushers, which, by the way, was my fucking favorite snack
so
when I was a kid.
This.
Oh my god!
Speaking of interesting choices to save the world. And actually, I want to do something on this one redacted tonight. But,
sorry.
That's okay. Gushers and Fruit by the Foot put out a statement for Black Lives Matter.
They are going to solve systemic racism, folks.
They're like the statement is something like, Gushers is working with Fruit by the Foot to care for Black lives or something like that. It's amazing.
Oh God.
And it's like, I mean, I've always said that we'll probably end systemic racism once Fruit by the Foot gets involved.
See, you're on Team Fruit by the Foot. I'm Team Gushers. Those things are fucking amazing.
I feel like Gushers sounds like a sexual term for.
It's very sexual, dude. You bite into it and then splooges this like creepy, unknown but delicious liquid into your mouth. Oh my God, it's incredibly sexual.
So as a young person, you have no idea that what you're excited by is blowjobs, but you think it's gummy candies.
Well, let's be honest. Most penises don't taste nearly as good as a Gusher. Just saying. In my
You heard it here
experience.
first, folks. You heard it here, folks. Folks.
Oh, you're so distracted now.
You know what's funny is when we tape these, so we're taping in the morning. When we tape these at night, I sometimes am having one drink as I tape them. I actually sound far drunker right now, not drinking anything.
Well, to be fair, you start talking about blowjobs with most
And
heterosexual men, and there's a lot of like that starts happening.
Gushers and Gooshers and Gershers. But yes. Anyway, that being said, I do believe blowjobs could solve systemic racism.
Well,
I think that's a guarantee.
That's. I would like to hear more about this thesis.
Thanks for joining us, folks. We're going to go over to patreon.com/commoncensored to tape a extra 10 to 15 minutes. Please join us over there and become a member because we are funded only by you guys. That's patreon.com/commoncensored. Until next time, keep fighting.
Act out.